All right, so here is our very first episode of Unlearn Us, the video series. I'm so excited to have Peter Gamwell joining me. Peter, thank you so much for joining.
I'm excited to be here, and thank you for having me on, especially as your first guest. What an honor.
Yes, well, I have so much to thank you for. I think you know this, but years ago I went to a Lead the Way conference and
Yes.
got to hear you speak, and didn't know you at the time, but was very inspired. And then later on moved to John McCrae, where you were my superintendent. Still, you didn't know who I was. Uh, well, and got the opportunity to invite you to some of the school functions that we had at the school. And
Yes,
from there,
amazing functions they were. We'll be talking about those, of course.
yes. But from there, I would consider you my mentor and somebody I really look up to and cherish the time that you have given me in my journey, in my unlearning journey. So
I really appreciate that. Thank you, and the respect is reciprocated, as you know.
oh, thank you. So I would love for you to tell my viewers all about who you are and what you do.
Well, I'll start off by saying just a little bit about my background. Obviously, people will detect immediately that I'm not originally from this side of the Atlantic. I'm actually from the UK. I was born in Liverpool, England. Spent the first 20 years of my life between Liverpool and London University, where I studied music and education. And then I had the most unusual happenstance. I was looking around for jobs just in case I passed my degree, which was by no means a given because my scholarly aptitude throughout my earlier life was not stellar. Fortunately, I had a natural gift in music. And so I was looking in the Times Educational Supplement for jobs. Thought it might be a good idea to take a look for some jobs. And there was one advertising saying, wanted female music teachers for Newfoundland. So I was irate, of course. I was thinking, good Lord, here I've been studying music like for 15 years, and now I find out the job opportunities are gender specific. So I wrote a letter and I said, dear sir or madam, I'd love to apply for the position as advertised, but unfortunately I've been blessed with the wrong set of criteria. Can you help me? Anyway, about 6 weeks later, to my astonishment, I got a phone call, and the guy says, "Is this Peter Gamwell?" I said, "It is." He said, "Are you the guy that was born with the wrong set of criteria?" And I thought it was a hoax call because I'd forgotten about the letter. Anyway, he said, "If you were offered the position," he said, "Oh no," he said, "Did you apply for the position of female music teacher?" I said, "I did." He said, "If you were offered that tomorrow, would you take it?" I said, "How much does it pay?" He said, $20,000. I said, "What's that in real money?" He said, "It's £12,000. I said, "Absolutely." So I spent the next 20 years as a highly successful female educator in Newfoundland. And what a time, what amazing people. I think I think as a community of people, they really represent the forms of creativity and inquisitiveness and curiosity and humor that I know we're going to be talking about. And then the last stage, I've lived my life in thirds, actually, 1997, as a result of work that I've been doing with community and schools in putting together rock operas and watching what that did to bring community and learning and students together. I decided I wanted to formalize that into a PhD, so moved to Ottawa, did the PhD, and then the rest is history. I've been here ever since.
Awesome, and we are so lucky for it.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Awesome. Well, my next question kind of related, you kind of touched on it, but what was your relationship with school growing up?
Oh, with growing up.
Yeah, you as a student.
I think, okay. I think up until about the age of 11, I sort of did okay. I had enough natural smarts and even though it was in an extraordinarily poor area of Liverpool, verging on a slum area, really, Um, but with family support and two elder brothers, but mainly my mother, she made sure we had a very, very good grounding in reading and music and whatever piqued our interest, sports. And so up until that age, I did okay. But in high school, it just didn't speak to me. I wasn't ready for it. It wasn't ready for me. And I left that experience feeling pretty stupid. And I certainly put it down time. And that's, I think, what has driven me for the rest of my career, to minimize the number of young people who go through that experience feeling that it's somehow about them being stupid. The system is very, very good at doing that. And I've made it my calling to speak about that, to write about that, and really to place a mirror in front of systems and schools to say, very often you do this, you don't even know you're doing it, you have no idea. It's so deeply ingrained in the structure of the system. So I know we'll get into a little more into that, but does that make sense?
Oh, it totally does. And I mean, I was the same.
Mm-hmm.
I think I tell my students now, it wasn't until I was about 30 years old where I was able to sort of see that I do have talents and that I am
Mm-hmm.
smart.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
learned how to play the system. Obviously, I got a
Yep.
degree, and like you said, it took me a lot longer to figure that out. But I never really felt smart, like you're
No.
saying, until later on when I had that same mission. So this is a big question, and I think you have lots to say about it. But do you think our current system is failing our youth at all?
Yes, it is. It is. There are many. I'd like to start out by saying this. I think one of the questions I was anticipating was pertaining to what are some of the wonderful things that you've experienced. So I'm going to ask myself that question.
Yes, you do that.
And I think I would say this. I've had the privilege over 40 years through all sorts of different experiences within the system as a teacher, as an administrator in 2 provinces, as a superintendent, and the opportunity to work with the most amazing and committed people, not just within the schools, not just teachers. Our society is now far too complicated for the learning of our children to rest on the shoulders of one teacher in one classroom. We are so far beyond that, it's not even funny, but many of our systems haven't grasped that. It's about the whole community of learners within the school. And when I say school, I'm not talking about the confines of the walls of the school. I'm talking about breaking those down, walking through them, and bringing in community. And when you do that, and you see the types of magical people who will generously and want to give of their time in helping to form that enriched and creative learning environment, that's the magic that I have seen. That's the system at its best. For me, the biggest challenge with the system is the structure upon which it is based. And so my comments about the negativities of the system have not got to do with teachers or EAs or volunteers or the parents. That's not it at all. Of course, just like in any profession, you see the best and you see the not so best, right? We've all had that experience with doctors and with lawyers and with tradespeople, right? Teaching is no different. But what is problematic, and what we have an incredible opportunity to address as a result of this very interesting few months we've been through with the pandemic, is to get at this structure. Here's what I mean. The current structures, which were really cemented in through the period of reforms over the last 35 years, are framed around a hierarchical understanding of intelligence. You have language and mathematics at the top, you have the arts at the bottom, and you have everything else sprinkled liberally in between. And then what was done to ensure that was cemented in is that time was allocated to those subjects. So the important subjects, mathematics and language, important. You do understand, like, the ones that have been deemed important by the system, by the organizations. We have many of our kids from the ages of 6 years old and up spending 65% of their day on those two subjects. I don't think this is a good idea for anybody. I don't think it's a good idea for the kids who happen to be okay in those subjects. It leaves them with the other elements of their brilliance and their potential are not so important. And it is definitely not a good idea for the kids who, for whatever reason, at whatever point in their lives are struggling. It doesn't mean they're no good at them. It means at that time. But what we do is, when we find out that they're not doing this well, we give them more of it, right? So it's a deficit model of thinking. We focus them on areas where we believe or perceive that they're not very good. That is, over the period of time, that is just, to me, brutal. It's an awful experience for those kids. I was having a wonderful conversation and ongoing interviews with actually many of your students about this, and they didn't even know me when I was doing the interviews with them. I think of Fiona, whose story I'm very much hoping to tell in the next book, but she's one. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of those kids out there, and it's deeply structured. So they come out believing themselves to be somehow stupid, when actually within them, they have got the seeds of brilliance which need to be nurtured. That's what we need to do as an organization. Flatten the hierarchies and create the conditions within our learning organizations for those seeds to flourish.
Whew. And I don't know if you've been in touch with Fiona lately, but she's doing amazing things. She started up an organization.
Yes.
She's consulting. She's amazing.
She's going to be precisely what you have been focusing your work on. She's going to be a change maker, and she's going to be a change maker because of you. It wouldn't have happened without the amazing work that you did. That's why I mean, I know you're very kind in extending gratitude to me to come in and be supportive of your work, but the opportunity, it was like a breath of fresh air seeing that. And getting to experience that. I mean, there was a reason. I think I've got about 200 videos of your kids. And again, when I go and interview them at those celebrations that you have, they don't know who I am. Well, maybe some of them do now, yes, because I'm sort of like a repeating ogre that keeps turning up. But their stories are all not all the same. But do you understand what I mean?
Yes.
They go out of their way to tell me that what you provided for them lay in stark contrast to other experiences, because most schooling, because of this embedded structure that I'm talking about, right? The status quo, it's very, very hard for teachers to rise out of that. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Anyway.
I feel like it's been my mission, the same as you, just to really provide an opportunity for kids like myself. And I think when I say kids like myself, I don't represent every kid, but I think there's so many kids. I've come up with my own theory, and I don't have any data to back it up. I'm sure I could find it, other than my 17 years working with kids, is that there's 3/4 of our kids that are disserviced. But back to what you were saying with, how hard it is for teachers to sort of embrace this new way of learning, or not even new way. It's been happening in so many places outside of the classroom. But we seem to have this mindset that this is what school is. And so the purpose of this video series, and sort of my journey, has been this unlearning thing, and going through the idea that we must unlearn to move forward. What do you think, whether it be educators or I often say, the big one is society. What do we need to unlearn in order to be able to move forward?
So, as you know, I'm also about to launch a a YouTube channel, and the way I frame it in a little bit of a different way to you. So what I do when I go around talking to people and looking, um, I look for how people have reimagined. I, we I believe that we need to reimagine, reconstruct, shaping environments in a way that creates those conditions for unleashing the brilliance that lies within everybody. So the first thing we have to have is that underlying foundational belief that there is brilliance in everyone. The current structures mitigate against that because we see intelligence as a hierarchy, right? It is so hierarchical, and it has ever been thus, and so deeply, deeply ingrained because of this time allocation, that's why I believe it's so hard for people to think beyond that. But in those circumstances where I have seen the very best of the reimagining, it's when people deeply embrace community. One of my favorite authors is the American Margaret Wheatley, who brings the idea of living systems theory into organizational learning, no matter what the organization is, right? It could be a plumbing company, it could be a major industry, it could be a boardroom, it could be a classroom. And what Margaret Wheatley, one of the things that she said that really rests with me, and which I've seen to be borne true throughout all of my experiences, wherever there's a problem, community is the answer. And you've seen that through your work. I mean, I'm working with all sorts of different, very fortunate with a school district in Alberta, with a school district with University of Connecticut, with another local school district here. And time again, it's that involvement of community. When you set a project for a child, an open-ended project, some of the stuff they come up with, you look around the staff on the school, nobody knows anything about it. So what do? That's the magic of it. You reach out. We've got all sorts of possibilities with our technology, right? Reach out, and something always happens. And so somebody or a group of people will come in and they'll say, yeah, we can help you with this. And off you go. And it was a little guy, one of the ones that did, this was one of the Lead the Way events, one of the Genius Hour events. And he decided he wanted to build a hoverboard out of a Toro motor so in spite of the health and safety concerns, the teacher just managed to find a mechanic who came in and helped this kid put it together. Magic, right?
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I reached out into the community, and I've had so many people so excited to give their time to see the kids, working on these amazing skills and seeing, like you said, the brilliance in each one of them. If you could pick one thing to change in our education system, because I know there's lots, what would be the first thing, or what would you want to see changed?
I would want to flip from a deficit-based approach to a strength-based approach. And what I mean by that is this. It's like sympathetic resonance in music. If you put your foot on the sustain pedal of a piano and press the C, the middle C, or any note, and then take it off, you'll hear all of the other notes mathematically related to middle C resonating. The same can happen in a negative sense. When the organization is rooted in a deficit form of thinking, what I mean by that is that, like even strategic planning, the first question you get when you go into a strategic planning meeting or a conventional one is, what are the problems in the organization? How are we going to fix them? Now, when a school district takes on that mantra and continually perseverates about identifying problems, that goes from the highest levels of organization and with this sympathetic resonance right to the classroom. So now you've got teachers, EAs, parents looking at the kids going, what's the problem with that child? How can we fix it? And we zoom right in on the negativity. Okay, that and that is what's so damaging when it's happening day after day, week after week, month after the month, and the kids are left wrong. What we ought to be doing at the strategic planning lesson is saying, what are the amazing possibilities that we want to achieve? How are we going to achieve them? And when it comes to children, what's the magic that lies in that child? And how can we set the conditions to unleash those seeds of brilliance? So I would want a fundamental shift in from a deficit to a strength-based mindset.
Oh, wow. I have goosebumps. All right. Well, I think we have a couple of questions. Oh, I have one more before we find out where we can find you. So I'm running the Social Change Makers program right now. We do a weekly podcast. And in the beginning, the kids came up with a question that they were going to ask every single guest. And originally it was, if you could have a superpower, what would it be? But then we talked to somebody who is an empowerment coach. And she really, and I think this goes along with what you're saying as well. And I love that she corrected us. So we've now changed it because she said we all have superpowers. We don't need special superpowers. You know, the idea is how do we bring those out of people? So exactly what you're saying. So the question is, and so she turned it around on us and said, is your superpower, if you were asked that question?
Humor.
Sure. Oh, yes.
I think that what's allowed me to make the impact I have made, because many of my views have been considered to be, how can we put it, a little threatening, I think, because they really say to the status quo, you've got a lot of thinking to do. When the organization places its priorities over the priorities of the individuals and groups within it, that can lead to a learning environments and policies and procedures and structure that, if you didn't know better, you might think have been designed to take the creativity that lies within people and stifle it on a daily basis. So when you're saying things like that and genuinely meaning them, it is so helpful to launch that on the back of some humor, because people don't know what to do with that.
Yes.
So that's been extraordinarily helpful to me. It's been I tell you, growing up in the slums of Liverpool, you need a sense of humor, and I think that's where it comes from. There are very few people in Liverpool who don't have a good sense of humor.
Yes. Well, I know you have a wonderful sense of humor. I've got to witness it over and over. Well, thank you, Peter, so much for being my very first guest on the Unlearn with Us video series. You have exciting, you've written a book, you do all kinds of talks. If people want to find you, where can they find you? And tell us about your book.
Yeah. And actually, this is I wasn't going to announce this at all, but I've just signed a contract for a follow-up book, which will really start to delve more. It'll build on the Wonder Wall, but it will start to delve more specifically. It'll push the ideas more. It'll connect through with living systems theory, and then it will tell the stories of various people that I've been working with and how they in their own worlds are making the extraordinary happen in different and wonderful ways. And then we will come to our own conclusions about that, how this can be helpful to all learning organizations. So my email is peter@petergamwell.com, and that's the best way to get a hold of me. I'd love to hear from people, and I would love to hear if people have stories of their own from when they were going through school, the stories that maybe the people struggled, or maybe they didn't. Maybe they've got wonderful stories of how individuals changed their lives. And also, if people working within the education system or in any organization have that they would like to be opening them.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again. I really appreciate you joining us today. And I know people are going to be in contact with you and love everything that you had to say here.
Thanks so much, Rebecca.